Vanakkam. There is a saying in Tamil that goes Mata, Pita, Guru, Devam, which means the order of respect to be given is first for the Mata or the mother. She shows us the father. The next person to be respected is the father. He teaches us and then he takes us to our Guru. The Guru is then respected because he is going to show you life and God. He is going to show you who you are and what you are here for. And finally, respect is given to God. We all learn from everybody whom we come across. So everybody is our teacher. But still, there are some people whom we hold very dear in our heart as our teachers and mentors. This video is my small attempt at paying my respects to my teachers and mentors and thank them. They have taught not only plastic surgery but also how to deal with every single situation in life. After I finished my post-graduation in general surgery, I had no clue as to what I was going to do, except that I wanted to do plastic surgery. I had only one big dream that everybody has. I wanted to be successful, but I had no idea about how to go about it. That was when a lot of people guided me, mentored me in the form of gurus and teachers. In fact, the very first guru who mentored me was Dr. Nirmala Subramanian, who was my professor at Kilpauk Medical College. The way in which she did surgery on the hand was amazing. I was reminded of parting of the Red Sea. The plains would just open up in front of her scissors and knife. Some of the advice she used to give was very relevant. Make the needle holder your slave. Blood-soaked dressings are for the movies. The dressings that you do must be clean. Good teachers teach, but great teachers inspire. She was the first teacher in plastic surgery who inspired me. She believed that success lies in relentless execution of the basics, and building a strong foundation was the most important step of developing a career. When I joined in Government Stanley Hospital at the Department of Hand Surgery and Plastic Surgery after my post-graduation in plastic surgery, I came under the influence of Dr. G. Balakrishnan. He taught and mentored me through the various aspects of hand surgery, basic and advanced, like flap cover, tendon surgery, and fracture fixations. To this day, whenever I do a flap cover for reconstruction of an injury on the hand, the flap that is used may have already been described or may be something new, but the principles that he enunciated were all followed. Like in this degloving injury, I could do an abdominal pocketing procedure followed by a delay and then division with skin graft on the volar aspect. The patient happened to be a clerk and could be rehabilitated to start using this right hand for writing. Dr. GB used to say, follow up the patient and make sure he gets back to work. I once did a replant of an amputated hand at the level of the wrist. In the morning it was found that there was a vascular problem. So when I decided to re-explore, Dr. GB joined me in operating. On exploration, the artery was found thrombosed and this was redone. He also noticed that I had done a very slipshod repair of the tendons because I had been more interested in the vascular anastomosis. He made me take down every single one of these repairs and made me do them perfectly. He said, your replant may survive, but that's not success. The ultimate success is getting back function. When dealing with multiple fractures on the hand, especially when associated with dislocations like in this particular example, my professor used to say, don't be too obsessed with perfect fixation on the X-ray. All you need to achieve is good acceptable fixation and remodeling will take care of the rest. True to this advice, when fixation was done like this, these were the results that were obtained. He was indeed a guru who lived and taught three things: speak with honesty, think with sincerity, and act with integrity. And that was the time when the posterior intraosseous artery flap and seemed to be a very interesting flap that I wanted to learn. The person who taught me this was Dr. B. Sampath Kumar, another accomplished assistant professor who was working in Government Stanley Hospital at that time. So when I used the posterior intraosseous artery flap for reconstruction of a hand defect on the hand, even today I think of the principles that he used to enunciate. Raising the flap starting from the ulnar side first, he used a very simple way of protecting the posterior intraosseous nerve from injury, that is, by dissecting the posterior intraosseous artery just proximal to the perforator where the nerve has already started dividing and going a little away from the artery. And thirdly, his technique of dissect, cauterize and cut was a treat to watch. After getting acquainted with the basics of hand surgery, I had a small elusive dream of doing a successful replantation. I did do replantation, but I met with failure. Not once, not twice, but 18 times. That was when I was advised to go as 3 weeks observer to Ganga Hospital at Coimbatore to pick up some points regarding replantation. So when I visited Ganga Hospital in August 2003 and watched surgeries done by Dr. S. Rajasabapathy and his team, I made a lot of new friends there. After I came back to Stanley Hospital, I gave a talk on the Ganga experience on September 5th, 2003. On the morning of September 6th, the very next day, there was an amputation of the left hand of an 18-year-old girl, which was replanted from 9 am to 6 pm. Close on the heels of this surgery was another case, a lorry driver who presented with an amputation of the left hand, and this replantation surgery was done from 6 pm to 3 am. Both these replantation surgeries succeeded. In fact, it was a double dhamaka after a string of failures. So what was it that I had learned at Ganga Hospital that made the difference? It was the culmination of a lot of points that I learned. Regarding dissecting the veins and keeping them ready, Dr. Rajasabapathy used to say, if the veins cannot be identified when there is no bleeding, it perhaps will be more difficult afterwards. Inadequate bone shortening is the commonest mistake in replantation surgery. And learn to use the zoom during the beginning of the training. You get a much better view of the vessels you are going to anastomose. But not all amputations and replantation were plain and straightforward. There were a lot of challenges. For instance, some of them were associated with avulsions, avulsion of the skin, avulsion of the tendon, amputations with segmental loss, and even amputation of other parts like the toe. The biggest challenge in such cases was the decision making. Having learnt the basic principles and the tips and tricks to follow, I learned to use the basic principle of the Nike ad, just do it. So when applying the basic principles I had learnt from Dr. S. Rajasabapathy at Ganga Hospital, I was able to succeed in a few cases of avulsion amputation, amputations with avulsion of the skin, amputations with avulsion of the tendon, amputations with segmental loss, like in this example where the lower end of the radius, ulna and the entire carpal bones have been lost, and also in replantation of the toe. The most important thing that I learnt from Dr. S. Rajasabapathy was the right perspective makes the impossible possible. My next small dream was to do a microsurgical procedure, a free flap as it is called. Though I had learned all that I needed in Government Stanley Hospital, I needed to learn a little more, and that is where Professor Mukunda Reddy came in. He conducted what was known as the Rapid Free Flaps Harvest. Though I could not attend in person, I saw the videos that the delegates brought back and learned from them. I still remember the points that were stressed upon by Dr. Mukunda Reddy. We need to have an excellent knowledge of anatomy. We need to know our planes. And we need to know when to go fast and where to slow down. These principles were valid whether it was reconstruction with a microvascular flap cover for an acute run-over injury on the dorsum of the foot of a child or a post-infective sequelae on the face in a child. It also proved valid for reconstruction using the gracilis functioning muscle transfer in a patient with a Folkman's ischemic contracture with a vascular problem on the limb, or a young boy with a loss of a portion of the radius requiring reconstruction using a vascularized fibula. And obviously, these principles proved useful even in the reconstruction of the thumb of an 8-year-old boy following electrical burns with a microvascular second toe transfer. It proved beyond doubt that a good teacher can inspire hope, ignite the imagination, and instill a love of learning. Then came the phase of learning refinement in reconstructive surgery. Dr. R. Krishnamurthy taught us that debridement is the single most important step in reconstruction. He showed that even in a wound like this, where an amputation was suggested, a proper debridement, biding your time, and reconstruction with a microvascular free flap can give good results. Another point Dr. Krishnamurthy used to say was, listen to what the patient has to say. He will be giving you clues about the treatment. I am reminded of a patient who had a side swipe injury of the right elbow in a middle-aged man. This picture that has been shown in the video is not his picture but a representative picture, but the X-ray is the patient's own. On seeing the wound and seeing the X-ray, I planned for an amputation because I felt that we may not be able to get back good elbow function, in which case the upper limb may not be functional. But Dr. Krishnamurthy, after he examined the patient, he said we need to reconstruct. It is our duty to reconstruct. The patient said, yes sir, it will become alright. I will get back movements. I know it. Please reconstruct the skin. Don't amputate. So we did an abdominal flap cover for the reconstruction. Patient came back after 2 years with a completely functioning elbow thanks to an elbow replacement prosthesis. And the best part was the patient remembered that I had suggested amputation and Dr. Krishnamurthy had suggested salvaging the limb. The other important point that Dr. Krishnamurthy taught was you need to take hand surgery to everyone, the students, the primary care physicians, everyone. And he conducted a hand injury awareness program throughout the state. He proved without doubt that good teachers know how to bring out the best in the student. And after this came the most confusing dream, brachial plexus surgery, brachial plexus surgery. In my younger years, when people talked about brachial plexus surgery and the different nerve transfers and nerve grafts, I would just look at the ceiling and count the number of bricks there because I just could not understand what was being said. But slowly, a very little understanding came in. This was made much quicker by another teacher, Dr. K. Sridhar. I did not have the opportunity to work directly under him, but I attended a clinical session where he demonstrated a clinical examination of a patient with a brachial plexus injury and how he deduced what was wrong with the patient and how he would plan the treatment protocol. This changed my way of thinking about brachial plexus injuries. In getting good results, I realized that a correct clinical examination accounts for 25%, planning accounts for 40%, surgical technique accounts for 10%, and a good follow-up accounts for another 25%. So, if a correct examination and correct planning are done, we are 65% of the way to getting good results. In my earlier years, when I came across this patient with a 3-month-old injury, with no shoulder abduction, no shoulder external rotation and no elbow flexion, obviously a C5-6 lesion, I did an exploration and a spinal accessory nerve to suprascapular nerve transfer and Oberlin 1 and 2 procedures. This was the obvious result. Shoulder abduction only 10 degrees, no external rotation, but elbow flexion is good. In the very words of Dr. K. Sridhar, examine and think, is it wrong? Why is it that way? How can it be corrected? So examining the patient that I had presented, I realized that we must plan to neurotize the axillary nerve also in a C5-6 lesion, because only then you can get shoulder abduction beyond 15 degrees and you can get shoulder external rotation also. And this I could see in another patient who did not have shoulder abduction and external rotation alone. When neurotization of the suprascapular and axillary nerves were done, he could get back excellent shoulder abduction and external rotation. Using the same basic principles that Dr. K. Sridhar had enunciated, I could restore elbow flexion and finger flexion using a free functioning gracilis muscle transfer for a global brachial plexus palsy. Dr. Sridhar's idea was very simple. You don't need talent, you need discipline to get results. The other thing that impressed me was his style of teaching. It consisted of sound concepts, clear diction, and a simplified presentation, especially the one he made on the extensor apparatus of the finger. This gave me an impetus to teach. After all, the two eyes of the surgeon are patient treatment and student teaching. As teachers, we have always been adapting. First there was the blackboard, then the green board, and then the whiteboard. If the medical teacher of today teaches the doctor of tomorrow with the technology of yesterday, he is doing gross injustice. Evolution has taught us that adaptation is the key to survival. So the bottom line is that we should not teach the way we know. We need to teach the way the student wants. And what does this modern student want? He wants information at a click, and he wants it immediately. So continuing on the dreams that I dreamed of teaching on YouTube. I believed I could do it, but where could I start? That was when opportunity knocked in the form of my friend and colleague, Dr. J. Jagan Mohan. He as the president and Dr. Sridevi as the organizing secretary of the State Plastic Surgery Conference wanted me to moderate a panel discussion on brachial plexus injuries in 2020. So I planned the session with an online course on YouTube of 12 videos on brachial plexus injuries till the conference and the 13th session at the conference. And this was successfully completed and appreciated. After the conference was over, I continued with publishing on YouTube. So now it has been more than 4.5 years since it was started, with videos being published week after week, now totaling 418 educative videos. And the channel has a total of 35,440 subscribers till now, with 2.4 million views. And after starting this YouTube channel, what has changed for me? I have been able to discipline myself. I have learnt many new things about common topics, and I have made great friends across the country and the world. And all this because of the wonderful teachers that I had. I had a lot more teachers too, like Dr. J. Mohan, who advocated and followed a calm disposition and a positive approach in all situations. Others like Dr. V. Jayaraman, Dr. Nirmala Ponnambalam, and Dr. Angeline Selvaraj, who taught me the basics of burns. All these teachers who I have spoken about taught from the heart, not from the book, and they lived what they taught. The greater connect that existed between me and these wonderful teachers were many. What they taught and showed had a real world impact, made me think beyond content, provided a deeper understanding of all the issues that were relevant, and most importantly, they are all continuous learners and encourage continuous learning. What about you? You too would have had wonderful teachers. Please tell about them in the comments box below. You don't have a teacher? Don't worry. Your teacher, your mentor, your guru will appear only when you are ready. So prepare yourself.